Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stigma Free Society's broadcast. This is almost live. It's like last time where I was kind of live. I was sitting there watching you watch this, but this is a recording of a live event that's happening on Tuesday. It's actually Monday today. Don't want to freak everyone out, but we are going to be broadcasting this live on the Stigma Free Facebook page on the Tuesday during our lunch and learn. My name is Daniel Toe. I'm a district principal in the Surrey School District, and today I'm so happy to have two employees of our district, but also mother and daughter, as you can tell by their last names. And they are here to share. We're going to be sharing about anxiety and learning disabilities. Coralee Curby is a school psychologist in our school district, and Kenzie Curby is an ABA SW, and I'll let them describe what each of their jobs is and introduce themselves. But please know, again, this is a broadcast for the Stigma Free Society. Please go to the Stigma Free Society website, check out their toolkit, their mental health toolkit for parents, kids, and for teachers and educators. They have a toolkit for everybody, so check out their site. And please know that as employees of the Surrey School District, we are going to always be in line with district policy. Of course, our opinions are our own, but we are going to be in line with district policy as we speak, as the people on Stigma Free Society know when they asked us to do this. Now, Coralee Curby also hosts our monthly mental health and wellness 40 on the Surrey School District YouTube channel. So if you have time to check that out, I'll make sure I put that in the link to check out our mental health website and resources. And in the Surrey School District, we are broadcasting from the traditional territories of the Kenzie, Samiamu, Coast Salish, and Kwantlen First Nations. We're very proud to be on these lands where we're broadcasting this almost live presentation to all of you. So Coralee, Kenzie, I'm going to start with daughter, because if it was my daughter, she'd want to be introduced first. And so I'll let you introduce yourself and what you do for the school district and a little bit of that role, because I think it really speaks into what we're going to be talking about today. Kenzie.
Hi, my name's Kenzie. I'm an ABASW in the Surrey School District. A little bit of what my job looks like. I work one-to-one specifically with students on the autism spectrum, and I do a large variety of jobs throughout my day, but I see myself kind of as the person that helps my student tend to all of their sensory needs, like care needs, teaching life skills, learning through in the classroom. And just making sure all of my students' needs are met and that they are reaching their goals.
Excellent. So that's with kids with autism, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Primarily. Okay. Awesome. But you trained, I know, as an EA. So you've worked with other kids with special needs as well, yeah?
Yes. So my students usually have multiple diagnoses, but I have also gone to school in my educational assistant program. So I've worked with children in wheelchairs, cerebral palsy, all different kind of, diagnoses.
Awesome. And Coralee, please introduce yourself, even though I think most people who are watching know who you are.
I'm Coralee Curby. I'm a mama of two, and Kenzie is my eldest amazing child, and I have also a son who is in grade 9. I am really a teacher by first training. I then did some counseling psychology and landed in the world of school psychology and have been a school psychologist in the district for going on, I think 21 years now. So I've been with the district for quite some time. And my role is a little bit divided now. I do a lot of the psych ed assessments, so diagnoses of learning disorders, learning disabilities. And also I do have a large role in terms of mental health sort of pilot programs and some of the supports that we're looking at for just new ways of supporting students in a more integrated and collaborative way. So I've been able to do some of that work too.
Excellent. So I am so happy to have you both here. And as people watching know, I look like I turned down my brightness during this because you both look so much more like serene than I do. And I'm just like, I'm right there. So I made sure I turned that down. But thank you for introducing yourselves. Now, in the students you work with, and a lot of them have learning disabilities or multiple diagnoses or atypical neurological development, how do you work with them and their different learning styles, and how does the different learning styles and the difference in their learning affect their self-esteem or mental health when you have a disability or an atypical way of thinking? How does that typically affect a student's self-esteem, especially in mainstream school? I will start with Coralee this time, and then to Kenzie, who's on our front lines.
Well, I think it's different for each child and each student. And I mean, in transparency, and I think that's part of what this talk is my mama hat too, is having two children who have diagnosed learning disorders, also other things, ADHD, etc. I think even with my own kids, there's just a real difference in terms of how they have maneuvered through school and their sense of self as learners. I have assessed, thousands of students over the last 20 years, and having met so many of them with very, very different experiences of school. Some are open and very open to support and feel really great about themselves as learners. And even within the same family, that can be very different from child to child. And then some students can be very, very full of like the things that we would be when stuff is hard for us and we have to do it every day. You know, some dread and some feelings of shame that they can't keep up. Also some feelings of avoidance and just actually dread. So, you know, it's very different, I find, from students, and just hearing their stories, even during the assessment process, really understanding it's a very individual thing for students and families to navigate.
Well, Kenzie, how about in the field when you're working with students one-on-one, whether it was doing a practicum on your EA or with this child that you work with now as a ABA support worker, maybe just what you see around you? Do you see a child's self-esteem or mental health affected by their perceived understanding of their own learning disability or learning differences?
Well, not only do I work with my student in my class, I try and help out with our other kids in the class that are sometimes struggling. And
Because you're awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. I have a lot of time where I kind of sit and I observe the students and I reflect on, you know, my lived experience throughout school with learning disabilities and ADHD. And I do see how, like, I'm in a kindergarten class this year, and from such a young age, I can tell, like, when learners know that they're doing it a different way than their peers, and it can be such a difficult thing, I find, in the early years to kind of process about yourself, is that I'm doing things differently. And it's when you need adults and teachers and parents to step in and say, hey, like, what you're doing is okay. Your brain is wired a different way, and this is how you need to learn. And that's okay. And so from such a young age, my mom always told me that. And I feel that's why I was quite successful in schools, because I knew that my brain worked a bit different, but that was okay. And I'm allowed to learn differently. And I need to find accommodations and be adapting and learn the way I need to. So, yeah.
Okay, well, you know, and let's keep you in the conversation right now going, because you're on the front lines. And what strategies do you use, and how can you, what do you suggest to staff watching this or parents watching this when working with students with differentiated learning styles? How do you help your students or the students around you overcome their differences and also feel a sense of accomplishment, right? In a K class, grade 1 class, especially my son is in grade 1 and, you know, just recently in K, and when he feels like he accomplishes something, even when it's just as simple as catching a rugby pass, he brightens up. And when he drops the ball, you know, he's like, oh, like you can see it visually on little kids. It's actually teenagers that hide it better, you know. How do we help these kids, especially when sometimes when you're working with these kids, their progression is so vastly different, like, especially in kindergarten, grade 1, some kids can read and yours are like, I can't even spell.
Yeah.
Right? How do you make them feel like that they've accomplished something?
I find the biggest thing I'll always say is to accommodate our students. And so, like, our range of what our students in our class alone can do are so different. Like, we have some reading at grade 3 level where others can hardly even identify certain letters, and finding things at their level, but also trying to challenge them to grow and understand what their peers are learning too is very important. I would say that especially with learners that get frustrated easily about their work, is always telling them it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to take things slowly, but we're going to work together, you know, and get to where we go. So I find that, I mean, it's not easy to do always in the class when you have 30-something students, but even that little bit of one-on-one time with our kids, just to let them know, like, we're here for you and we can help work on whatever question is hard together, I find is such a confidence boost to, you know, power through the next however many questions they have to go. So, yeah.
Well, Coralee, let's go to Mama Bear. Like you've done this yourself in a home, but you also work with like a lot of our programs in our school district, which is vulnerable youth, and teenagers. And I think some parents or families watching this with teenagers were like, well, how do you help them improve? Especially when, as you get older, the differentiation between them and the kids who are grade level it's actually quite vast, and kids recognize it, and sometimes they stop going to school. Like that's why we have some kids with attendance issues, right?
Yep.
So how do you suggest to family, what strategies would you use when you used in the classroom? What strategies do you, as a school psychologist, suggest to our teachers to help some of these kids?
I think one of the things I watched out for both of my kids is what their passions were and what they naturally did very, very well, and really tried to allow them to engage in those things. Kenzie, I would say, had a really different sort of view on going to school and being a part of school than I would say my son, which is just, he's all sports. That lights him up. He loves it. He getting to school has been like actually a win, and that he actually gets there every day, just being very honest about that. And so really though, from a young age, like you were talking about with Spencer, is what lights them up, what actually brings joy to them, and making sure that they have the areas of competence in their life, that they can also feel really good about themselves in those other areas. And then some of the things that are shoulds and should be's and developmentally for some of our students still need adult support and need that for a really long time until they're ready to kind of launch. I even think of Kenzie when she was young with organization. It was like kind of a disaster zone around her world until about grade 7 with organization and keeping things together. And so we did a lot of like co-regulating emotions. We did a lot of organization together. And then it was like those skills start to get built in. And then she kind of launched, and she is like an incredible young adult now. She's kind of an adult now, not even a young adult, where all of that stuff that was supported. And honestly, it was probably beyond what many parents were doing, like grade 7, figuring that she could organize for herself and keep track of her homework and all of those things. But then it just kind of caught up. So I think realistically, also having the expectations for our kids, sometimes we can take it personally when our child is not at the point that we think they should be, and make it about ourselves, but really circling around them and making sure it's about them and their growth and their development and supporting them too. I had to learn that, not making it about, any sort of, I love school. I love school. It was my favorite place to be. I was like a top all around student, and that was my
Of course you were.
Yeah. And that's not for all. That wasn't for Kenzie. And, she learned differently, and the same thing with Carter too. So, as much as you can support and grow them, it's not about us as parents. It's about us sort of tending to the children we have as they are and bringing out their best. So
I don't know. I seem to remember Kenzie being one of the youngest graduates from her EA program, and also probably one of the first to get a full-time continuing job. And she's probably the youngest in the school district just by age in terms of employees, just so you're aware.
100%. And you know what? Since she was about 7, her whole magnetic person was drawn towards students with autism ever since she was so little. And so, had I said, you have to go to university or this is the path you're going on, would have missed out on this incredible human working with students that she just lights her up every day. And you can't ask for anything better from a parent's perspective than seeing your child in the midst of something they just are so happy about. So.
Well, that leads me to a question that's not on the email that I emailed to you, but talking about fear, and something we talked about before we started recording was that I think for some kids, there's a lot of fear in having that adult because they don't want to work with them, or having altered, like changed assignments, or alternative to assignments, or modified assignments, because they don't want to be different than other kids. So how do you, Kenzie, on the front lines again, work? How did you, first of all, overcome that? Because you must have had some strategies and things you need to do in school, and not to be embarrassed in your school with all your friends sitting with you and like you have modified this or this. And then how do you use that experience to help kids who don't want to seem different? They don't want to have an EA or an ABA worker. They don't want to have someone looking over their shoulder when none of their friends have that, right? They're friends with, oh, you're different. You have an EA. Kids know, right? How do you help them overcome that fear?
I guess I have to do like the best advice I would have is for our like support workers coming in to kind of work on themselves in that kind of area. I remember like sitting in LST in high school, and the EAs that I was always drawn to were the ones that treated me like an equal and like their friends, and didn't look down on me kind of like, oh, you don't know this, this, and this. So like from an experience I had last year when my student was away, I spent a day with one of our students in older grade, and he was very much at the level with his peers. Want an adult standing there to go over everything with him.
I'm losing you a little bit. While you maybe sort out your internet connection. Oh, there you're back. You're back.
You're back.
You're back.
That
Keep
was
going.
weird. My entire thing just went black. Whoops.
Yeah. All good. So you said you sit with you treat them as equals, and?
Oh, and yes, just kind of, giving space, but then also saying like, if you need me, I'm here for you. But also just treating them kind of like a friend, I find is like easiest. Like when, hey, let's do something fun together. Like if we do this assignment, let's go play on the swing. It's like just making it not intimidating and not scary to have someone there to help. That's what I would say.
Okay. And for mom, so how did you see something again? I said to you guys before we started recording was, I actually know that some parents probably are afraid of even the assessment part, right? Should I get my kid assessed? And what if I find out my kid is autistic? What if I find out my kid has XYZ, the learning disability? What do I do? And it's almost that paralyzing fear of, what do I do if I find this out? It's almost better not to find out. It's like the people who don't go to the doctor because they're afraid of what's going to come, right? Afraid of the future diagnosis. And I think there are some parents that fear A, a diagnosis, and B, what they should be doing with the diagnosis, and how that's going to hinder their kid. Because as parents, I'm a parent, you're a parent, we want our kids to be successful. And you have a grossly successful, I don't think you're even 20 yet. Are you 20? No, not yet, you see, right? You have a hugely successful child. But how did you overcome that fear of, oh my goodness, what if she can't?
Yeah, one of the things that I always try and frame when I'm doing assessments, because I've definitely had those experiences many, many times. I'll talk about another tangent in a second, but I just try and also frame assessment as understanding. Kenzie was incredible at masking a whole lot of stuff. I think we as kind of a pair had a lot of strategies for supports, and I didn't quite realize how much we did together to support things before she actually had her own assessment. And that was in grade 7, which I'm in the world of school psych. And there was a lot of things that she did exceptionally well, but math, no matter how much we did interventions and supports, her fluency in her reading, I actually cried when she got her psych ed because how low she was in some of her processing areas. And I felt like I kind of missed the mark in noticing it, but she was incredibly bright and incredibly verbal and had so many strengths that it was actually a little tricky to really understand what was going on underneath with all of the pieces she was trying to do. She was a hard worker. And so, some of the what I try and bring in my job with the assessment is that understanding, because if we understand things better, we typically then can find the supports that are most appropriate for a student. We can lessen some of the load. I always compare it like glasses. If you're just sitting there trying to look as hard as you can, and a pair of glasses is going to actually help you see better, it's going to allow that accessibility of information so you can learn. And for many of our students that go kind of undiagnosed or don't have that understanding, they're kind of fighting through it all on their own. And so hopefully the point of assessment and diagnoses is just a better understanding and framing what some of those common similar things are for students who have whatever it is that they are experiencing.
Yeah, well, and that speaks to me about early intervention, right? When you talked about your experience of having your child diagnosed in grade 7 because she was so obviously super smart, able to hide the deficiencies. By the way, I'm horrible at math too. You are not alone, right? And you so I mean, Kenzie, you're working with kids in kindergarten. Do you see the benefits of early intervention and really getting these assessments if you feel something is up, done, and getting your child assessed so that you can figure out the solutions? I think earlier is better, don't you think?
Yes, it's funny because we've actually had in my class this year like a direct kind of experience relating to that one of our students for the whole first half of the year went without an autism diagnosis and was very clearly needing that one-to-one. And now that they've received their diagnosis, they have that one-to-one support and they have gained speech, they've gained interest in learning and participating and sitting at the carpet and just all of those things that were missed at the start of the year. And you could tell that they really wanted to take part, but it was hard without a one-to-one support. And if they didn't get an access or to that diagnosis, they would probably be at the same place they were at the start of the year, which was unfortunately slipping behind because a diagnosis was missed. And so I feel from personal experience, like I do kind of grieve a bit of my childhood that I went undetected and unnoticed, because I know if I had those accommodations from an earlier age, I probably would be a bit easier on myself as an adult. I find myself trying to meet all of the needs of my and expectations of my neurotypical peers, and it's quite difficult on myself. So that's me kind of, my adulthood now is kind of teaching myself to give myself accommodations and give myself time. So I would say yes, early intervention, diagnosis, all of those things are wonderful.
Well, I appreciate both of your vulnerability and your sharing. I'm going to go to something a little bit sappy right now before we go to the end. Coralee, if you were to say one thing that you're proud of your daughter for, just think about it. You don't have to say it right now. And you didn't, just so you know, for the live watching audience, they did not expect this question. But I think you guys are, you are both really open, and you obviously don't mind sharing. So I don't think it'd be injurious for you to say what you're proud of Kenzie for in front of the 2 or 3 people, maybe more, watching this broadcast.
Honestly, oh gosh, I have a very, very, very long list. I always say this to Kenzie. I had a lot of school to learn about a lot of things, but she has taught me more about lived experience of things than I ever imagined. I mean, we've talked about learning disabilities and some ADHD, but there's just been a lot of things that she has lived with that she's really helped me to understand how to parent. And it's really a gift. Like, kids teach us about our own stuff. And so there's golden opportunities from our children to sort of see our own things when we're gifted with the right ones that we're supposed to get. But with Kenzie, her resilience, her ability to understand others and herself in such a mature way, her giant heart, and her actual exceptional skills working with students with autism, and then how she brings what her challenges were in her own life and really tries to make the lives of others easier and better and happier. And she's also so much fun and is like the best sense of adventure. And she takes all those things into her adulthood, and she's overcome a lot, but she goes forward with like an incredible spirit of joy and is very contagious to those around her. So yeah, super proud of all of those things and more. I could list them forever.
Okay. Well, before I give you the last words, Kenzie, can you thank is there something you want to thank your mom for you getting into, like, again, you're not even 20, so you're barely an adult. You're not even legal in America. So, but for helping you through, the things that you shared about earlier, even though it was diagnosed late, I'm sure you have lots to thank your mother for. So I'll give you some opportunity to do that here.
So we'll see if I tear up or not.
Okay.
I just thank you for always letting me be me. Like, my mom explains to me, taking me to gymnastics when I was 18 months old, and all the kids are sitting in circle time doing their stretches, and I'm off hanging upside down from the bar halfway across the room. And just, even though my mom, I don't think always knew what was going on with me from a young age, she just always accommodated and taught me to advocate for myself. And yeah, taught me, like, underneath the screen, I'm using my little fidget toy, and that, like, that's something that my mom taught me is okay to have and do, and just like go at my own pace and be who I need to be. So thank you for always backing me up and supporting me through everything.
Okay. Well, with that, let's give one final piece of advice to parents and to educators. in working with their atypical neurologically developed child or children with learning differences. I will start with Kenzie and let Coralee this time have the last word. Kenzie, what's one or two pieces of advice you can give to parents and educators on how to deal with atypical neurological children or children with learning differences?
Probably that, I mean, I'm not a parent, but coming from lived experience that your child is exactly where they need to be, and that it takes a village to raise a child, especially one with neurological differences and learning disabilities, and that if you're trying your best and doing your best, that's what your kid needs, and that's all you can do. And yeah, like you're doing great. That's all I can say. And it's hard. It's hard for us. It's hard for teachers to understand. It's hard for parents to understand. But at the end of the day, there's always hope, and there's always resources that you can find and people you can talk to. And yeah, it's going to be a journey, but it's worth it in the end. And that there's always successes, no matter how little or small.
Okay, thank you. Coralee.
I know, I feel like we didn't even discuss any of the strategies or things we were going to, but honestly, I feel like the whole center of what we're talking about is that relationship piece, and that connection and a safe place in schools, to be who you are and to come with what you come with. And even if it doesn't fit in the traditional kind of typical way of everything else, that, you know, each one of us needs to feel safe and accepted and understood for who we are. And that there's a spot for each child within our classrooms, no matter what they come with, that we can all grow and we can be challenged and take steps ahead. It may be at a different pace from one another, but at the heart of it, like what I see as the most hopeful thing for all students is when they can be cherished for who they are and seen for who they are in their own journey of learning in our schools and in our families. And if we can do that together, even if, it just the outcomes are so much higher when that safety and connection and belonging are at the heart of what we're doing.
Yeah. And I also want to advocate for families to not be afraid of that diagnosis, right? And not be afraid to recognize learning challenges and to really have that awareness, right? So the earlier parents are able to go at the interventions and to utilize interventions, utilize staff like Kenzie or school psychs in our public school system, the earlier you're able to help children, the more successful they will be. You can obviously tell by the way that Coralee raised Kenzie from 18 months, letting her grow. And even though some of those other things were diagnosed later, the successful woman that she's become today, I think there's a lot of pride there, but also a lot of hard work that went into that from mom and from daughter. And you have another one to go. Carter's almost going through high school and probably going through some things that you mentioned earlier. So, you know, the work is not over for parents, but that high level of care that parents can show and the educators can show as well to kids is what will make them successful. That one adult that will make the significant difference in their life. So with that, I will thank you both so very much for your vulnerability and sharing on the Stigma Free broadcast. We're going to co-broadcast it later to the school district as well as a Pro D for staff. But I want you to know that I appreciate you, appreciate your vulnerability, your sharing. But I know that having both of you together on screen is actually very special for me, and to see, I've known this family for a little bit, and Kenzie, to see you grow from high school to who you are today. I hope I'm not being presumptuous in saying that I am also very proud of the person that you've become. And I see so much parenting that's gone in and so much care from Coralee as your mom. I am in awe of what the two of you represent in terms of a mother-daughter pair. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
well,
Daniel.
Again, it always is hard for me because my iPad dies. So it's hard for me to play out the music, but we're going to play you out now. Thank you again for watching the Stigma Free Society broadcast of Lunch and Learn. Please tune in a month from now when you can have lunch with me, whether it's live or kind of live like it is today, depending on the availability of my guests, where we can talk about another important topic to do with education and mental health. We hope that you can have lunch with us sometime in the next month or so. Have a great day, everybody. And we always bob out. Yeah.
Wow.
Because we have to get to 30 minutes. Actually, no, we don't. It's all good. All right, see you later.